Forget the top overall seed in the AFC. Forget the AFC East. Forget anything else other than this Bills team needs to scratch and claw their way even to just get into the playoffs if things continue the way they have been going right now. I'm Kevin Carroll. Welcome to the Buffalo End Zone podcast. The Bills lose another one that's a 5-4 record right now. We're midway through the season.
And I'm Jon Scott from Paycor Stadium in Cincinnati, where it looked as bad in person, and Kevin, as I'm sure it looked on television for the rest of everyone else, or if you were listening on the radio and whatnot. It's the same story. I mean, do you just want to re-rack the podcast from any of these other losses, or even the win over the Giants over the past few weeks? Or
it is 1:30 in the morning. Can we do that?
Yeah. Or frankly, go back to all of the things we were so pleased to see against Tampa Bay a week and a half ago, and they didn't do it. It is so bewildering, Kevin, that the most obvious things are just completely pushed to the side, even after in the same game, they once again showed to be the way that this offense in particular should operate. It's a really interesting conversation, I think, that we can have now of where is the blame and who is the person that's responsible for this pivot in the offense. Is it Sean McDermott, who after the game said he doesn't know why they stopped going up tempo? Is it Ken Dorsey? I think that's where I'm going to start to land a lot of the blame. Mm-hmm. And then how much is it? You hear execution and things like that. But I think I'm, and I don't like to do this, but I think this may be an episode that's going to be putting a lot of the blame on the shoulders of Ken Dorsey.
You, my friend, are 100% correct. 24-18, the final. The Bills lose. I don't even know where to get started with this, so I'm just going to jump right into it, John, and just talk about what the reaction was from head coach Sean McDermott and the players on offense after the game when asked, or even not asked. Up-tempo, no huddle, fast-paced offense that's able to move the ball. We saw it against Tampa Bay, and it worked. We saw it at the beginning of the game, and it worked. What the heck goes on in the middle of this game in Cincinnati? To be fair, you and I both said going into this that we thought that the Bengals would come out on top. But the frustrating way that the Bengals came out on top, and the fact that you have a Bills defense that is banged up, beaten, full of injuries, and still fought to keep the Bills in this game, to have an offense, to have a game plan come out. And John, we saw it at the beginning and we saw it at the end. You start moving the ball, you get the fast-paced offense going, and you're getting into the end zone. Why in the world would you not do that in a game where you knew you had to keep pace with Joe Burrow and the Cincinnati Bengals? I don't understand it. If it was a plan of, well, the Bengals offense is so deadly, we need to keep Joe Burrow off the field and kind of slow the pace down. If that's it, guess what? That's not your identity right now. You have Josh Allen, Stephon Diggs, Dalton Kincaid had a great game again, but I think tried to do too much too late in the game, stretching for extra yardage to get the first down. Had that fumble in the fourth quarter, John. So Ken Dorsey, this is squarely on him, because when push comes to shove and Josh Allen is asked to execute and look like Josh Allen that everyone came to know and like, the Bills' offense works.
The Bills come out, and it's widely known, they script the beginning portion of the game. So the opening drive, a lot of the things you see immediately out the gate are planned and gone over and practiced, and it's like a script. It's, hey, play 1, 2. I mean, it's not to the T because the scenarios, dictate it, but it's planned out ahead of time. And then as the game goes on is when, it's more flying off the cuff. 7 plays, 85 yards in 3:15, 5 first downs and a touchdown. I mean, they looked great. To your point, no huddle, quick passes, distributing it. Josh Allen's running a little bit. Boom. In just over 3 minutes, they go and they answer a Cincinnati impressive opening drive. And that's where I'm sitting here thinking, okay, maybe this is different. They got punched in the mouth, but they actually had a counter punch, unlike the playoff game. So here we go. Then their next drives in the half were 4 plays for 1 first down, 2 plays, no first downs, interception by Allen, 3 plays, -1 yards, punt, 5 for 37. They got 2 first downs, and that stupid intentional grounding call. That was not intentional grounding. That pushed him out of field goal range. Then they come out of halftime, 11 plays, 4 first downs. They kick a field goal. All right, progress. 3 for 5, no first down punt. And then you get into the fourth quarter and they're down and they got to pick it up and there you go. Then you start seeing 4 first downs, 5 first downs. Then you mentioned the Kincaid fumble inside the 5-6 yard line and then the touchdown at the end. But here's the thing, Kevin. I go into the locker room unsolicited. Some of these guys, Dalton Kincaid, Trent Sherfield, Sean McDermott asked about it. He doesn't understand why they weren't using up tempo. They're all mentioning up tempo, and lo and behold, why are they not doing it? And it's not just simply they got to go fast 100% of the time. That's not realistic and whatnot. But to me, the bigger thing is not necessarily why are they not doing it, but why does it appear that there is this disconnect where the players seem to want to do it, at least on face value. Sean McDermott saying he doesn't know why they stopped doing it. So if the players want it, the results show that they're better at it. The head coach doesn't understand why they're not doing it. So what's getting lost here? Is it just simply Ken Dorsey is choosing not to do it? And based upon the information, at least that's on the surface that we have, that's honestly what it seems like, which I'm not, and they're not going to do this. I can't imagine.
Yeah.
But to me, it's almost fireable. It's almost a fireable offense to have the recipe for success and just blatantly go against it.
Well, no, you heard it in Sean McDermott's voice, if I could play amateur psychiatrist here. When he was asked about it, he did one of those things, well, it's something we're going to have to take a look into. To me, that says, as the head coach, here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to look at it. I'm going to call Ken Dorsey into my office and ask him what the heck is going on. Like, we've heard from Sean McDermott that he does have a say in what this Bills offense is going to do. From his reaction, it seems like they've had the conversation and Ken Dorsey is maybe outthinking himself or overthinking things and thinking, well, maybe that's what people are expecting. I'm going to change it up. John, it drove me nuts to see after what they did on that opening drive, the Bengals go down and make it 14-7. The Bills come out and run the ball twice with James Cook, and it goes nowhere. And now you're forced into the passing role, and then that just derails the entire Bills offense from there. And then it just looked ugly until the end of the game when they started to speed things up again. I think this is 100% on Ken Dorsey. But like you said, I don't know what you do if you're Sean McDermott. You're calling the defense right now. You're not calling both and being the head coach. I don't know who else they have there to kind of share or take over, but something's not working, and it seems like I'm confused, you're confused, the players are confused, and the head coach is confused. That means when Ken Dorsey speaks to the media tomorrow, will we find anything else? Probably not.
No, you're not gonna get any answers. It's, well, we got to look into this and all of this, but it's like you also hear things like communication and getting on the same page and things like what's happening here? We're 9 games in, and a lot of these guys are the same players. I just it doesn't make sense to me, and the reason I think that you also can kind of point the arrow at Dorsey is he had over half of a season kind of like this last year, and it's not any better.
Yeah, no, you thought maybe he learned some things from last season and would take them in to this season. And obviously, that's not happening. But also, we heard going into this game, and you keep hearing it, that the team and the offense are still searching for their identity. Well, their identity is Josh Allen. Their identity is Josh Allen and Stephon Diggs and players who can support them around the offense. You're coughing. I'm about to start coughing. Um, but then you look at a team like the Bengals who, well, they seem to, once Joe Burrow got over his calf injury, they have their identity back. The Kansas City Chiefs, they have their identity. The Miami Dolphins do. How are you searching for your identity over halfway through the season? And by the way, if the Jets somehow win tomorrow night, you're behind the New York Jets. So, when looking at this offense and where they stand right now, John, it's just mind-boggling. And I think some of the stuff that we saw with Josh Allen getting more involved with, I don't see anything there. I'm going to take it. I'm going to run with it. I'm going to pick up the first down. We saw him make a few moves here and there and was able to do it. I think that needs to be part of the offense now because you're at a big crossroads here with your season once you get past the Denver Broncos. Because then you have a lot to deal with and you're already in a big hole even if you beat the Broncos.
Well, I think you're starting to see that switch. Josh Allen once again the leading rusher, which is something we haven't really seen a lot of this season. 8 for 44 and a touchdown with a nice little taunting penalty that also was lame.
Yeah.
The penalty was lame, not the pointing thing. But here's the thing. You mentioned all these teams. The Bengals are flawed. Kansas City is flawed. The Eagles are flawed. These teams are flawed, but they're still winning, and they're still finding ways to win football games and still putting up points and working their way through it. I mean, the Bengals, they really can't run the football. Joe Mixon, 4 for 37, touchdown, like he had some runs that counted. Imagine a game where Stephon Diggs was 4 for 41, and you'd be like, wait, they won that game if Stephon Diggs did that? Well, T. Higgins has been absent. He had the best game of his season, 8 for 110. And so they're finding ways to win, and they seem to have answers because they lean and rely on the pieces, the quarterback, and let them do what they do best. And for whatever reason, we're just going to keep going in circles, I guess, to some extent. It's not happening. But like, what are some of the other things we talked about wanting to improve the offense? Dalton Kincaid, career high 10 receptions, 81 yards on 11 targets. Those are all career highs, and he's been elevating the production. You kind of thought that would happen with Dawson Knox out, but just you're seeing what type of a weapon he can be. And I think that role can even continue to expand. So now you got Diggs doing Diggs things. Now you're adding Dalton Kincaid in the mix. But here's Gabe Davis. 2 targets, no catches. One of them probably should have been a pass interference or face mask in the end zone. But, I mean, it's Shakir, 4 for 57. Okay, like, that's good. You want to get him involved, but there's no consistency here.
And John, that touchdown drive, Trent Sherfield was out there, not Gabe Davis. And
Gabe Davis left the locker room before the media was allowed in. So that kind of tells you the frustration that he's having, at least with this football game. So it's I don't really know where to turn, right? I mean, there is an element of execution, but you didn't really see some of these penalties that the Bills were having that were killing them. You know, the Josh Allen interception and the Dalton Kincaid fumble, those were huge. They were big, especially the Kincaid. But I just think I'm not going to necessarily put the onus as much on the players and what they're not doing, because I don't think they're being put in the best position to succeed.
Yeah, I agree with you 100%. And I think that's where we stand with the frustration right now is that when you see it put out there, the beginning of the game, the Buccaneers game, and what can happen with this offense and what should happen, you mention, or we mention, other pass catchers out there. You have Kincaid, you have Stephon Diggs. This was even pointed out by Sean McDermott that while you have a Khalil Shakir catch here and there and a Sherfield catch here and there, it doesn't match the eye test, obviously, with spreading the ball around and doing what they need to do, John. And the offensive line is no great shakes either, though. You can't let them off the hook with this as well. But when you have your identity as supposed to be one of the best offenses in the league, and you have a defense that's down Matt Milano, Tre'Davious White,
Daquan Jones.
We can go on and on, the injuries that have built up, and they're the ones keeping you in a game like this and totally providing enough for this offense to, we keep making these stops, just get some points on the board, and it's just nothing doing. And I couldn't help but notice in the TV broadcast, Josh Allen, when they do cutaways and stuff, looks flustered, flabbergasted, why nothing's working. And again, I think it goes to the players on offense who are being asked to execute do not like what they're being asked to do because they don't agree with it.
So, I mean, do you think they need to make a change? Is a change
Yes.
going to help? Okay, so you think, and just for the sake of this, we don't know. My assumption would be Joe Brady would be an internal candidate to maybe take over as offensive coordinator. He's the quarterback's coach. He's been an offensive coordinator, albeit wasn't overly successful in Carolina and didn't last very long. But maybe that's what they do. I mean, I don't know. To me, though, if you're going to make a change, if you weren't going to do it after the Tampa game when you had a week and a half, a mini bye, going into a Monday night game, I mean, that gives you an extra day. I don't foresee it happening. And I'm not necessarily saying it should happen, but I think some sort of a significant change needs to be made. And there's only very few ways that you could do that, especially now that the trade deadline is passed. I mean, they're not going to bring in a player. And when we had these discussions around the trade deadline, I always said that I didn't necessarily think a substantial move acquiring an offensive player would benefit them because they have to be utilized properly. And I don't have the confidence that they could even utilize the talents that they have now. And so I don't know what's going to happen, but they're at a crossroads. We thought they were at a crossroads a couple weeks ago, but now they are. I mean, they're, as we sit here at 1:35 a.m. after the game, they're on the outside of the playoff picture. If the playoffs started today, the Buffalo Bills would not be in it, and they're 5-4. And we kind of mapped this out going into this game of you and I both picked the Bengals to win, the Bills to lose, and you knew what the ramifications would be in terms of their place in the standings. Luckily, the Miami Dolphins lost this morning, so their path to the playoffs, I think exclusively, is by winning the division. I think only one team from the AFC East is going to make it. I know the AFC North is going to duke it out amongst themselves, but I think that's where the wild cards are going to come from. So the Bills got their game back of the Dolphins. They got to keep pace. But 5-4, the margin for error is so small that you don't have time to continue to figure it out. And the reality is also, Kevin, it's not a Goodwill Hunting type math equation here. The answer is so obvious, and they showed it against Tampa. They just need to find whether, if that involves getting rid of Ken Dorsey or just being more authoritative from the top with Sean McDermott saying, this is what you have to do.
Right, and I think that's the way I'm leaning, is that Sean McDermott has to say, this is what we're doing. So, I have my other responsibilities, Ken, but this is how I want you to run the offense. So you put together a game plan with this in mind, and this is how we're approaching games for the rest of the way.
Now, I'll say this. There is a group of the fan base, and they're in my mentions and whatnot, who think that maybe ultimately Sean McDermott is the one that's kind of holding the offense back because he talks so much about being balanced and establishing the run. And he mentioned how only 8 carries between the running backs is not enough. Well, I don't think running the football is going to solve their issues, right? I mean, I don't need to see more James Cook runs. How many of these drives get stalled because of James Cook or Latavius Murray getting no yards, right? I mean,
or they don't even start.
So I just I don't need to I don't necessarily see that. So that's where I think. But then when McDermott's saying I don't know why they stopped going up tempo, that's where again disconnect right. is the word for me coming out of this game. It's something is just they're not aligned in some capacity, whether that's McDermott, Dorsey, the offensive players. I think there's disconnect, and to realize and know where the blame should fall in that disconnect, that's where I don't know. It seems the offensive coordinator is the easiest place, but we don't know all the answers. Again, it could be McDermott saying we want to be balanced, and Dorsey's maybe more of a yes man than Brian Dable was, and that's where we find these lulls once you get out of the scripted portion of the game. I don't know. So that's where I'm in a state of flux because I don't know where's the fair place to really put the blame. But I think based on the information, it probably has to be Ken Dorsey at this point.
Yeah, I was gonna say if it's McDermott holding Ken Dorsey back and McDermott saying to the media after the game he doesn't know why they stopped going up pace or up tempo, that's a pretty jerk move if you would do that, John, as a person. Like, you're the one telling him to rein it back in, and then you're telling the media, hey, I don't know why we're doing what we're doing. I don't coach I'm not the one calling the plays on offense. So that leads me to believe that McDermott is for the higher paced offense, the no huddle offense, and that this is just I don't even know, like you and you keep saying, you've never claimed to be as smart as an NFL coach, but I mean, this looks so obvious to everybody that, and I would never say you should start listening to the fan base. Believe me, I would never say that, especially now. I held myself back on that one, but you know what I'm saying. It's hard to say, well, I'm not as smart as Ken Dorsey when it comes to putting together an offense. But at the same time, there are so many obvious decisions that aren't being made that you're just, as a fan, as a viewer of football, you just left there scratching your head asking why.
Nailed it. I mean, you nailed it. And here we are again. I obviously wasn't there for the Jags post game, but we talked about the game after that. And seemingly every podcast we've done, we have these same conversations. Yeah. They just are kind of ratcheting up. So I guess now we could shift to the defense because they deserve some credit. And they got dinged up. I mean, Terrell Bernard out with a concussion. Micah Hyde left with a stinger. We find out Christian Benford tweaked a hamstring. Dane Jackson kind of got dinged up, although he said he was fine after the game. Rasul Douglas ends up getting some time. Linval Joseph, these guys are fresh off the street in terms of they weren't with the organization. Douglas a trade. Linval Joseph literally was a free agent, and he made an incredible play to stop Burrow. They got contributions, and McDermott's the defensive guy. So you got to give him some credit the way that he's bandaging that group together and coaching them up, and they're still doing enough for where they should still be able to win these football games. I mean, that's really all that there is to be said. But like if Terrell Bernard is out extended period of time because of the concussion protocol, I mean they're rolling out Tyrell Dodson and Dorian
Yeah.
Williams, and it's like you saw on the Mixon touchdown run, that was Dodson just not shooting the right gap. I mean, he just like ran into a wall of his own people, and um, Dorian Williams has been given the shot, and he's a young player, and he was making mistakes, and that's why they took him off the field. We haven't seen him the past couple of weeks. I mean, at some point, they're not going to be able to, yeah, Cincinnati had almost 400 yards of offense. They were on the field for almost 37 minutes. I mean, they're not going to be able to withstand all of this and hold a team like Cincinnati to 24 points and keep them in it if they keep stacking up like this. But you got to give some credit to them because they're battling out there, and they're going deep on the depth chart. I mean, Cam Lewis was playing safety at one point, so they're fighting. So you got to give props there, but there's even deficiencies there in areas that aren't really banged up. And that's the pass rush, Kevin. It has to be better.
Yeah, pass rush was almost getting to Joe Burrow time after time. It looked like, just a couple of more seconds was needed to get there. There was even a play where the Bills blitzed and couldn't get to Joe Burrow, and he burnt them. I think it was T. Higgins.
That's a good bet. He burned him a lot.
Picked up a big first down where it was like the Bills went all out, and Burrow just, as soon as Higgins broke, just put it right in the perfect place. I do want to give Dane Jackson a little credit, though, John. Dane Jackson looked really good. It really stood out in this game time after time. And it was early and it was often where when you start hearing that, well, Dane Jackson's not out there because they're rotating cornerbacks, it's like, well, why? Why are you doing that? Dane Jackson's been doing well since the first snap of this game. He's the one bright spot during that first drive for the touchdown and the second one where Dane Jackson was there making plays. I think a penalty that stupid roughing the passer penalty where Dane Jackson made a really good play. But he was a highlight on that Bills defense, and as it just gets thinner and thinner, I mean, it's literally amazing how banged up that defense is and how many starters aren't there.
And you thought a year ago the Bills dealt with injuries and were really depleted, and it's gotten worse this year. 100% agree with you on Dane Jackson. He was spectacular. Also 100% agree that the Tim Settle roughing the passer was asinine. I mean, it was just absurd. Added to the list of just things that the referees on both sides of it. I mean, the Bills got some calls that I'm thinking, you've got to be kidding me. They're calling that too. Not a great evening in Cincinnati for the referees. It's not why the outcome of the game was what it was, but still. So Dane Jackson, yeah, I give him props, but I'm going to shift focus again to the pass rush because you're right. They were pressuring, but the difference now is at the beginning of the year, I mean, they were relentless. They were the bright spot when the offense was struggling early. And you're thinking, man, if the pass rush can continue to do this, Leonard Floyd came out the gates hot. You're seeing A.J. Epinesa be awesome. Rousseau was playing well. Ed Oliver was a monster. And you're thinking, my gosh, Von Miller doesn't even have to be Von Miller. And they get him back here, and they add just another guy off the edge. They're going to be impossible to stop. And then just seemingly almost right aligned with the offensive struggles, the pass rush hasn't been the same. And Leonard Floyd got in there. He got a half a sack, and Jordan Phillips was in there.
Can I say something stupid?
You can.
Why does it seem to me that the pass rush got worse when Von Miller came back into the lineup? Am I way off on that? Because it seemed like the pass rush, and I know Vaughn's snaps were limited against Jacksonville and the Giants and whatnot, but it almost seems like, well, Vaughn's back, so maybe I don't know. I'm probably overthinking things because that's also around when Daquan Jones got injured as
Yeah, I think it
well.
was more a product of Vaughn just isn't doing anything. And he admits it. He said he felt this game is the best he's felt physically since returning, which is encouraging. He's getting better. But he's still less than a year removed from an ACL. He's still in his mid 30s. And those aren't excuses. They're realities that they're working through. And they have the depth and the guys that you shouldn't have to rely on Von Miller to always be Von Miller. The problem is Greg Rousseau. I was sitting next to Mike Catalana from Rochester in the press box. I said, is he even out there? I didn't even notice him for the entire game. And what's happened to Greg Rousseau? He had a nice start. AJ Epinesa, I think, with Micah Hyde, I think we're kind of batted a pass down at one point off the edge. But he's not really been the disruptor he was early in the season. Leonard Floyd continues to be pretty good at producing pressures. And Oliver says he's dealing with an injury, and so he's not 100%, and so he hasn't been the same. And you're right, Daquan Jones they're missing, Jordan Phillips. It's just I don't know what it is, but they got to be better. And there is going to come a time that while they're searching here, Von Miller does need to get better. I mean, he doesn't have to be Von Miller, but he has to at least be someone that they can trust to disrupt the game every now and again. And at this point, he hasn't. And I think maybe that has not been as talked about because the offensive awfulness has been so in your face and astounding that that's where all the focus goes. But at some point here, and Vaughn says he's close, and I've seen plays. Yeah, he's been close. But, I mean, at some point here, he needs to start at least flashing every now and again the Von Miller level of play that they're paying him $20+ million to do.
And no coincidence, the lack of pressure on opposing quarterbacks coinciding with the fact that the Bills haven't had an interception in games now, haven't forced the turnover in what's going on weeks at this point, John.
Dolphins game was their last time that they had an interception. So what was that, week 4, week 5? So it's over a month removed from their last interception. And when they've had dry spells like this in the past, I mean, turnovers, interceptions, they can be fluky to some extent, lucky, whatever, balls tipped in the air or whatnot. But as McDermott said after the game, I mean, it's also elevated when you speed up the clock of the quarterback because the pass rush is getting to them. Bills are doing a lot more blitzing. And I think that's also indicative of your front four. And it's out of character for them. I don't hate it, but you know what that obviously means, putting certain guys. And I just don't know if they're continue to be depleted on those second and third levels, linebacker and the secondary, if you can afford it. But the front four has to be better, and we'll see if that can happen against the Broncos on Monday night.
Yeah, you know what's going to happen on Monday night. This is like the season a couple of years ago. Win a game, lose a game, win a game, lose a game, win a game. I mean, I think we can agree that they should beat the Broncos. And again, they should have beat the Patriots and the Jets. But, and then we'll be back into this funk where hopefully, like 2 seasons ago when they were doing this, they kind of right the ship at the end of November and then went on that nice run, stacking some wins together. But you're right. You have a makeshift Bills defense basically hanging on by a thread, doing everything they can do in an offense that should be at full power, just not doing what we have come to expect them to do. And I think you need to kind of put all that together and just look at what actually works for you, and that centers around on offense Josh Allen having the freedom to make decisions when plays break down, which I honestly think they took away from him this year.
And the time is now, Kevin. I mean, urgency. Mitch
Oh,
Morse
yeah.
was mentioning, hey, like there's always urgency, but it's heightened. Trent Sherfield says it's heightened. That's what he said after the game. And I'm looking at the standings here. You're right. The Jets play on Monday night, but the Bills are ninth in the AFC right now at 5-4, and Kansas City, Baltimore 7-2, Jacksonville 6-2, Miami 6-3. Pittsburgh 5-3, Cleveland 5-3, Cincinnati 5-3, and then we'll see what happens with the Jets. I mean, these are the teams that they're fighting for. All the teams in the North, and then the division winners. And they've played Miami. They lost to Jacksonville. They lost to the Bengals. Yeah, they still have Kansas City. Like that, is that good? It's good because like you control things. But in my opinion, the 1 seed is out the window.
Yeah.
That's just like, don't even think about seeding. Just worry about getting in.
Yeah.
And Josh Allen said afterwards, you got to have probably 10, 11 wins to get in, and we have 8 games to go. So do the math.
Yeah, you have 5. You have some winning you need to do in order to get in, and it's not that easy.
In Josh Allen's mind, they have to win 5 of their final 8 games. So in that stretch, Broncos, okay, they should beat them. Jets, I think, even though they lost, they should beat them. There's 2. Eagles, I'm not picking them to beat the Eagles. Bye week. Chiefs, I'm not picking them to beat the Chiefs. Cowboys, I don't know at this point in time, unless things drastically change over the next month. I don't know if I'd pick them to beat the Cowboys. Chargers, I don't know. I mean, they should beat the Chargers, but the Chargers aren't like a layup. Then New England, you already lost to them, and then the Dolphins. I mean, to get 5 more wins they're right on the line. Like, you're gonna have to beat some really good football teams to do it, and that's where I don't know. I mean, like, if they play like they are now, and the offense is operating like they are now, do they maybe get to 9 wins? I mean, Denver, the Jets, New England, Chargers, maybe.
That's
like,
it.
Or maybe they right there. There you go, and that's optimistic. So I mean, it's crazy to think about the Bills winning 8 to 9 games.
Yeah, I mean, this is their quote Super Bowl window, unquote, and holy cow! And John, the other thing that's frustrating is because you'll hear, well, at least the Dolphins lost today too, so it's not bad. Do you understand, if the Bills beat the Patriots and then win today with what Miami's done, the Bills are way in a really good spot that they're owning the AFC East. So to just kind of take comfort in that, well, Miami lost 2 is kind of crap to me at this point, because you're missing these chances to overtake the Dolphins and start to bury them. So to sit there and just have that mentality that, well, it's not as bad as it could be. Yeah, but it should be a lot better.
Oh, yeah, without a doubt. And the time is now. I mean, if you're going to find get-right games, which even get-right games haven't lived up to that at this point, they have to do it the next couple of weeks. And it's okay. Try to build something against the Broncos. Try to build something against the Jets, who defensively, I mean, they've shown repeatedly now that they can give the Bills fits, beating them twice in the past 2 years. So
yep.
They got to basically try to swing things around against Denver, and then do their best against the Jets and Eagles, get to the bye week, and then, if you win 2 of the next 3, that puts them at 7-5, and then you got a 5-game stretch where it's, the Chiefs, Cowboys, Chargers, Patriots, Dolphins. I mean, you're going to earn it. They're going to earn it. The talent is there. So that's
right.
why it's not like it's a sinking ship. These guys don't know how. Yeah, maybe some guys aren't, they're older, so they're not the same players. Or maybe the coordinator's not the best. Or maybe Allen's not as crisp, or whatever it may be. But they have the pieces. Even as banged up as they are defensively, they have the ability and capability to do this. It's just, that's what makes it so maddening, banging your head on the table saying, Why is it this hard? It shouldn't, and they don't really have time to figure it out.
Talk about maddening. I just want to touch on this before we go. You kind of touched on it a little bit. The officiating around the NFL this entire day. And of course, when the Bills play at 8 o'clock at night, you get to watch a lot of football. So the Bills-Bengals officiating aside, the entire day, John, is just full of bad officiating. It's frustrating, and I'm coming to this as a fan of football and enjoy watching college football on a Saturday, NFL on a Sunday. To see these officials do what they're doing to this game right now just makes you so mad. There's points where you don't even want to watch the game anymore because it's being dictated at times, but not by the players. I mean, just in the Bills game alone, there's a kick to Dalton Kincaid's shin. Why that wasn't called is beyond me. The roughing the passer call, or whatever they want to call it. Josh Allen pointing a finger at another player gets a penalty on it. And I don't care what Dean Bellino or whatever the heck his name is, head of officiating on the coverage tonight about Josh Allen's intentional grounding. Give me a break. You talk about someone who doesn't need to be a coach or whatever in football to notice something. The naked eye tells you Gabe Davis stopped running. That's why Josh Allen's pass fell in the middle of nowhere, is because Gabe Davis. And if you want to sit there and say, well, the letter of the rule is that that's a penalty, I don't even want to hear it. Like, the fans, I think, are fed up. Half my timeline or my text chains are all about referees right now. Daquan Jones is on Twitter complaining about the referees this entire afternoon. I talked to Fred Jackson about it before you joined us on the postgame show. He's mad. It's become too much. And it seems like the league is just not doing anything at all about it. No accountability.
It's funny because I'm not the fire the coach, fire the coordinator, plays all the blame guy. I'm not a let's complain about the refs type of person, but this is a different world we're living in, Kevin. This podcast is flipping the script, unlike the Bills' offense. We're getting into things that we don't traditionally like to do, and I would agree that the officiating was horrible. The grounding penalty was stupid. The roughing the passer penalty was ridiculous. The no fun league flashed its head again with the Josh Allen laughing and pointing at someone. Like, who cares? Like, what is a player supposed to? What's Tim Settle supposed to do? He didn't go high. He didn't drive him to the ground. He didn't put all his weight on him. It was a bang bang play. Burrow releases the ball. He hits him and he tackles him, and
Right.
That's roughing the passer. And to your point, it's an option route. So Davis cuts it off. Allen thought that he had him beat, so he threw it deep. And so, I mean, honestly, I think the ball was thrown before Davis had even turned around.
It was.
So the ball's in the air because it's a timing route, and it's all the way there when he turns around to break it off. Well, duh, just use common sense. Like, the point of grounding is to not allow quarterbacks to just wing it whenever and avoid taking sacks or whatever. And ultimately, would that have mattered? Probably not. I mean, they lost by 6, so it doesn't. But that's a field goal. It's just it.
To me, I'm just coming at this more of a fan. Like, the roughing the passer call is coming hours after criticism of a roughing the passer call in New England where a Commanders guy hit Mac Jones, and it was the same thing. And all you heard for hours after that was the league needs to clean this up. And then you have it in the 8 o'clock game too. Almost like there's almost this feeling of just, we don't care. We're going to do what we're going to do. And it's just making the league just hard to watch. You know, Josh Allen points his finger at a guy. Someone pointed this out on Twitter. That's a penalty, but some defensive back breaks up a pass and runs half the football field down to the end zone screaming and yelling. I mean, come on.
Well, they missed the face mask on Gabe Davis. I mean,
right.
If he doesn't do that, I mean, who knows? I mean, maybe he catches it. And there's a difference in the game. So again, it's not why the Bills lost.
Right. And I don't want to harp on it. Today was a day like the Cowboys-Eagles game had a lot of crazy decisions made by refs that it's like we're killing our awesome product right here. But whatever. This isn't why this is just something that was just on my mind throughout the day. And then watching the Bills game, it just added to it and pushed it over the top. But, hey, John, we got a little extra time until the next game, but another primetime game coming up. Monday Night Football for the Bills as they are back home to host the Bengals. The Broncos. Thanks.
It's 2 a.m., Kevin. It's okay.
Thanks for saying no the way you did. But, all right, we'll head out and we'll get you ready for the Bills-Broncos game coming up on Wednesday. For Jon Scott, I'm Kevin Carroll. Thanks for joining us, everyone.